Hey, you. Yeah, you watching this video. Before we get into things, I have a little announcement to make. I want your money. Well, not actually, but hear me out. I started up a Buy Me a Coffee page where you can throw me a few bucks if you like my content. This whole YouTube thing isn't exactly something I'm thinking about doing full time, but a little bit of monetary kickback would be nice. And if you like my stuff, you can support me there. Right now, I don't have any membership sort of system set up, so really it only exists for you to throw a few bucks at me and leave. But if this ends up being something that actually gets me a little bit of money, maybe I'll consider setting up some kind of membership. Really, I don't know. Really, I didn't expect to get this far to begin with. I thought I'd get maybe 1,000 subs and be done with this, but seeing as I'm pushing 2K now, I figure I might as well make some kind of plans for the future of this channel. Anyways, point being in all of this here, if you like my stuff, you can feel free to donate to me at this link in the description. And now we can get to our scheduled programming. Over the last decade, very few game genres have had the staying power that the much maligned crafting survival games have had. Despite nearly being played to death over the course of the mid to late 2010s, new ones still keep coming out, although not to nearly the same degree. And as someone whose brain was in its most malleable state in the late 2010s, many of these games have firmly lodged themselves into my earliest gaming memories. I mean, so many of these were coming out that it'd be impossible to properly catalog all of them in a reasonable amount of time. Because, well, it, was the style at the time. If you were a small to medium-sized development team working on a game anywhere from 2009 to 2019, you pretty much had to have some kind of element of crafting or survival. Or zombies. There were a lot of zombie games around then too. Not important. And hell, if you had both, you'd be printing money. 7 Days to Die did that, and they managed to be one of the few games that, despite being in early access for the better part of a decade, managed to have a mostly successful release. Then you had games like The Forest, who aimed for a more grounded approach for survival. Albeit grounded in this case meant cannibals instead of zombies, but that's a topic for another video. But games like The Forest were some of the few to combine survival and crafting elements with a semi-cohesive story, opposed to something like Minecraft, arguably the progenitor for the crafting craze, where the story is, well, there basically isn't any, or something like 7 Days to Die, where the story is just present enough to set the scene. The Forest uses its plot as the main driving force behind the gameplay. You're not just some random guy who took a flight detour through the Bermuda Triangle. You're a father who's lost his son, a son who eventually goes on to become the protagonist of the game's sequel. And while yes, you can completely ignore most of the story and just, play the survival part of the survival game, you can ultimately beat the game. It has a sort of soft ending. And by that I mean, at a certain point, once you've completed the main story, the game is pretty much over, but you can still go ahead and enjoy anything else the game has to offer. Only a small number of games have this sort of system, at least that I can think of. Games like Subnautica, Raft, maybe a few others. But for the most part, it's a genre that's been dead in the water for some time now. I mean, how many developers are willing to risk sinking years of development time into a mechanically complex survival game that also has story elements to keep players engaged? Well, Deep Field Games did. And recently, too. I mean, like a month ago recently. Abiotic Factor is a survival/adventure game developed by Deep Field Games, and published by PlayStack. At the time of writing this video, less than a month ago. Okay, well, not actually a month ago. I maybe kinda definitely lied when I said that it was technically launched this year. It was actually launched in early access back in 2023, but only very recently has it been released into 1.0. This is one of those games that I was kinda eyeballing for quite some time now. I watched the early trailers, saw a bunch of tubers played in early access, all that fun stuff. But I never, pulled the trigger and actually bought it. Other more enticing projects came up, and besides, I didn't think I'd like this game as much as I do. For reference, I bought this game about a week after 1.0 dropped, sometime in late July, which coincidentally lines up perfectly with my production timeline for the SWAT 4 video. So if you were wondering why that video took so goddamn long to come out, you can thank this game. To put it into perspective, I bought this game and played through the entire thing in about a week. My playthrough was a little under 60 hours long. It was one of those fleeting instances where when I wasn't playing the game, I was thinking about playing it. I'd be laying in bed at night staring at the ceiling thinking about playing this game. I'd be at work and I was thinking about playing this game. It was really, really bad. Well, the game was good, like really, really good. My state of mind and worth ethic, not so much. I'm getting ahead of myself though. To put it simply, this game is more or less Half-Life meets Project Zomboid meets SCP. It's a survival game set in a Black Mesa-esque facility with a bunch of highly anomalous creatures roaming about, and you're just a scientist stuck in the middle. If any of that sounds even remotely interesting, please just go play this game. It's worth every penny, trust me. Finding a genuinely well-inspired survival game in the year of 2025 is a rare sight to see, and finding one that lines up perfectly with my hyperfixations is, well, that's pretty much impossible. I mean, the last time that happened was when Ashes came out. That combined my love of Fallout and Doom total conversions, and voila, you had one of my favorite games of the year. But I can't say that I was expecting it to happen twice in one decade. But to get ahead of myself here, and as a word of warning, this review isn't exactly going to be the most, unbiased thing in the world. So I'm probably going to spend 90% of this video's runtime glazing the absolute hell out of this game. So, viewer discretion is advised, and I don't know. But what do you usually put here? I don't fucking know. I give up. The nature of this game being essentially a love letter to classic Half-Life as a whole means that the developers took heavy inspiration from that game's visual and auditory aesthetics to make this one. They effectively took the Black Mesa research facility and turned it into something more in line you'd see with something maybe from the mid to late 6th generation. Of course, the game still feels like it looks substantially better than a game from '98, probably because it does. Like most retro-adjacent games, there are plenty of things that would have absolutely fried your GPU 20 years ago. Regardless, the game still nails that classic aesthetic as best it can. The kinda chunky yet softly rounded models, each packing a surprisingly high amount of detail, even in spite of the fact that they all have these classic smudgy texture mapping enabled. You know, the kind that makes the whole game look greasy, but not really in a bad way. Oh, and side tangent, I know the original Half-Life was meant to be played with texture filtering on, since it did technically ship with it, but myself and many others just equate old Half-Life with pixely textures. I just can't help it. The game's art direction is pretty solid too, although the nature of the game taking some, let's just say you go to some exotic places does mean that it can feel kind of all over the place. Across the board, most locations in the facility share the same motifs and visual pointers to, you know, keep you grounded. It's when we get to the portal worlds that things start to get kind of iffy. All of them are so fundamentally different from one another in the research facility that comparing them just doesn't really make much sense. They're good, don't get me wrong, but maybe sometimes it can feel a little jarring because it's just so different. Again, art design is good, but sometimes the developers can feel like they were throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, literally in some cases. But on a more sour note, the game's performance is, not incredible, but, you know, not abysmal. I'm not running this on the best of specs, but I still think my PC should easily be able to handle anything this game can throw at me. But because it's a survival crafting game with a mostly open world that only just came recently out of early access, means that the performance can leave a lot to be desired. It's passable. I mean, at the worst of times I never drop below 50 frames on a mix of high and ultra settings, and for the most part, the vast majority of the game runs perfectly fine. Since the game is, you know, set primarily indoors and underground, very few spaces are large enough to cause the game to choke while rendering. The whole facility isn't even loaded in at once anyways. Sometimes there's sneaky loading screens, other times there aren't. But really the game runs fine. But I'm sure some of you out there looked at the game and thought, yeah, my PC can run this, but, you know, check the spec sheet. Across the board, sound design is also just generally serviceable. Very few things are above anything I'd call just good. Nothing too crazy here. Of course, because I'm a massive nitpicking moron, some things do sound kinda off, but really it's not that big of a deal. Guns are punchy, and most melee weapons sound impactful, save for maybe one or two outliers. The main offender being the hard lightsaber, which, despite how awesome this thing is to use, falls into the kinda just meh category. It really looks the part. It's a giant plasma-based lightsaber broadsword thing that can deflect bullets, but it has the same problem as the Dragon's Tooth from the first Deus Ex game. It looks awesome and feels good to use, but it just sounds super weak. Thankfully, in the heat of combat, it's not super noticeable, but still just eh. On the other hand, the voice acting is more noticeably a mixed bag. I'm sure there were a handful of developer stand-ins involved with this one, to put it very bluntly. That does lead to a lot of charm, of course, but in some areas it can be a pretty noticeable lack of quality control. For instance, the scientist you play as sounds pretty good. Either because they were riffing on Half-Life for more than a few lines, or because it's voiced by everyone's favorite meme lord, Gianni Matrigano.
I am just about boiling up.
Probably both. But then you have some of the random scientists, which are serviceable, but nothing to write home about. Really, it depends on who's reading the lines. Sometimes it sounds acceptable, other times it sounds like they just kinda didn't have their heart in it. Enemy sounds are thankfully much better, nothing too crazy here to talk about. Really, at this point, I'm just nitpicking. The game is still engaging enough, and the environments have enough visual intrigue that some iffy sound design doesn't really kill the immersion. Really, my point here is that the game looks and sounds pretty good, but it won't be knocking your socks off. Most of my real praise lies in the gameplay. As I have alluded to over the course of this video more than once so far, my main reason for liking this game is, well, the actual game part. Despite seeming pretty simplistic on the surface, a mostly standard survival crafting game, it can get pretty complex later on. But before I get ahead of myself, we need to create a character first. Similar to games like Zomboid, you start off by choosing a job and traits. At the time of writing this script, there are a decent selection of jobs and traits to pick from, although unlike Zomboid, your job has very little bearing on how you actually play the game. Each one just gives you a few stat boosts and skill bonuses at the start of the playthrough, and unfortunately this means that the Summer Intern, the blank slate class, is the only one that's actually really worth taking, as the extra trait points that you get can be spent on a more impactful character build. Traits themselves are also kind of a mixed bag, seeing as some of them are really only XP bonuses for skills that can eventually be maxed out. Some of them are more impactful, but this isn't always the case. You can also pick negative traits that will give you a debuff in exchange for some extra skill points to work with. Again, this is something that should sound pretty familiar to Project Zomboid fans. On the whole, the gameplay itself is also surprisingly similar to Zomboid. Your base 4, well technically 5 needs if you count health, are all pretty standard fare. You need to manage hunger, thirst, exhaustion, and lastly and most bizarre, continence. In layman's terms, you gotta do what you gotta do. And yes, there is a shitting minigame, and yes, squared, you can also shit yourself, which is actually a tactical advantage because you can use that poop to make fertilizer. But besides all of that, you're really in for a pretty typical survival experience, at least when it comes to most other factors. The combat, base building, farming, fishing, cooking, it's all there. But in my mind, the reason it's so special is because of the environment you're in. On the surface, most of these things can seem pretty simple, but due to the fact that you're a scientist stuck in a clandestine research facility, means that basic needs are substantially more complicated. Some basic amenities that you would find in other survival games are gone, and replaced with more outlandish counterparts. And because real defensive means, like proper weapons and ammunition, are hard to come by, the means in which you defend yourself can get pretty outlandish too. Combine this with the fact that you're a scientist who can come up with all kinds of crazy tech, and things can get pretty ridiculous. This kind of sentiment extends to the base building. In a game like The Forest, there are plenty of large open spaces to build an expansive base in. Large fields and wooded hills where you can build cabins and fortresses to your heart's content. But things are a hell of a lot less simple when you get underground. You have to work with the constraints of the rooms inside the Gate Cascade research facility. Since you can't build the foundation of anything you want, you have to compromise with something that the developers created. And as much as I love games like Minecraft and Terraria, where the world is more or less yours, a preset map was definitely the way to go for this game. It forces the player to get creative and find unorthodox solutions to stay safe at night. And the developers knew this, which is why there are hundreds of possible places where you could set up shop. All you need is a single power socket, space for a workshop area, maybe a little couch, and you can make a functional base anywhere. You could also interpret this as the developers encouraging the creation of several smaller outposts across the many sectors of the facility. You could just stick to building one really fortified base, there's nothing wrong with that, but building a network of bases across the facility is a very viable strategy, which I think is pretty cool. Combine this with the gameplay loop of exploring the depths of the facility, and you have something that you can sink hundreds of hours into and still not get bored. There's always something you can be doing: building, crafting, getting a new weapon or piece of armor. But of course, exploration and base building are only two parts of this formula. There are plenty of other things worth doing that you virtually never have to interact with at all. Take fishing, for example. The fishing rod is unlocked very early into the game, although it can be upgraded later on down the line. Fishing itself might seem kinda superfluous, seeing as how there are plenty of other means of getting food around the facility. But it has other uses. Every fish can be butchered and split into several resources, each of which being useful as a substitute for other things, allowing you to make an entirely renewable source of glue and oil. The fillets themselves can also be plainly cooked or used in other recipes that can provide you with more nourishment. And on the topic of cooking, it is a very powerful skill in this game. Even just getting it up to level 3 can basically solve any food problems, as that unlocks the creation of soup, which, unlike regular food, won't spoil and can be split into 4 portions for multiple people. Or, you know, if you play the game in single player, you can just eat all of it. Later levels also unlock special devices that can be used to bake things like cookies and pies, which can give players unique buffs. All of this, of course, only comes with some pretty significant investment in cooking, as, like all skills, the experience requirements start to get pretty ridiculous. In the save file I made for this video, I didn't manage to max out a single skill. That may have been due to me just relying on a bunch of different skills instead of just one for most of the game, but still. There's also no traditional level system. Instead, each skill is increased by doing certain actions attributed to it. Fishing XP from catching fish, sharp melee by dealing damage with sharp weapons, reloading from reloading weapons, so on and so forth. Some of them you gain passively, others you have to go out and seek. Some of them are pretty easy to get a lot of experience for, like construction, which is something you're going to be doing all the time, and then a few, like throwing, are almost completely worthless, and take a very long time to level up properly. Regardless, all of this contributes to the game being incredibly rich with content, even at times if it can be, pretty easy. This can be tweaked through an incredibly robust custom difficulty menu, and frankly, I love when games give you the option to tweak difficulty. It makes the experience far more engaging for really anybody. It's just a nice option to have. Unfortunately, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. While the core exploration loop is phenomenal, the combat leaves, something to be desired. It's not bad, it just feels off. I don't really know if it's the sound design or the general jank or maybe the hit detection, but it's something. Well, okay, the hit detection I know for a fact is kind of fucked, seeing as your hitbox as a player is fucking ginormous. Enemy attacks that you very clearly should have been able to dodge are still capable of doing damage, specifically melee attacks. I don't know why, but sometimes they just magically connect through the power of Kiwi jank. Deep Field Games is based out of New Zealand, so that's why, you know, the game is set down under. God, that was so fucking stupid. Why did I leave that in? The poor hit detection doesn't extend to the ranged enemies, so it's not that big of a deal, but seeing as the vast majority of your time is going to be spent in melee combat, it can be a bit of a pain, and in my personal opinion, I think that some enemies just have way too much health for their own good, especially later on when you have more powerful weapons that can still take upwards of a dozen swings to bring down common foes. It's just kind of ridiculous. The in-game codex does list enemy weaknesses and resistances pretty verbosely, so it's not a huge problem, but it's just still annoying. Another personal nitpick being that I just feel like all of the major sector armor sets and a lot of the weapons too, having like 1 to 2 or even 3 upgrade paths seems a little overkill in my opinion. Personally, it just feels kind of flat. Like, yeah, you made this cool armor set, but oh look, it's only level 1 of a set that has 3 different levels. I see what they were going for, as it can make certain armor sets last a little while longer, but why not make entirely new sets with new bonuses, instead of just, well, you know, reskinning a previous set and calling it a day. The higher level variants don't even have any unique stat bonuses over their original counterparts, just higher defense, and oftentimes much more expensive repair requirements. Really at this point I'm just nitpicking. The core gameplay loop is so addictive that honestly I can see past most of the minor technical and gameplay nitpicks. As you can see, I'm very unbiased when it comes to this game. I tried to warn you. Moving on. Assuming you've created your character and played through the tutorial, which really isn't all that helpful if we're being honest, then we can finally move on to the story. And let me tell you, it is a doozy. Well, it should be anyways. Really the main draw for this game is, again, the gameplay. Not to say the developers didn't try, but for most part you can just completely ignore it if you want. After all, the game just kind of spits you out in the office sector with pretty much no warning straight after the tutorial. The main goal of this sector is pretty easy: escape. After clearing through the opening areas, establishing a small base camp, and fighting off some minor threats, we can arrive in the main lobby. The security guard here says that the whole facility is under lockdown, and that the only way out, to his knowledge anyways, would be to head through the manufacturing sector. Of course, the manufacturing sector is blocked off, and judging by Mr. Bleeding Out over here, going in right now wouldn't be the smartest choice anyways. Besides, we need a power cell to get this door open. Well, we needed to power the forklift that can be used to open the door. Whatever. And from here on, you're basically free to take as much time as you want to explore this area. Hell, you're encouraged to. As I've explained previously, this ain't System Shock. The developers don't expect you to go through and beat the game in a straight shot. No, that's fucking insane. You're presumably, required to build a base. After all, many of the game's hurdles require you to craft stuff to proceed, and making an entirely new crafting bench every time isn't really an option. They cost a lot more than 4 wooden planks, so the nomadic lifestyle is kind of out of the question. So, in the meantime, while you chip away at the office sector, you build, fortify, create a stockpile of items to fall back on. Again, you can build a base pretty much anywhere, as long as you have at least one outlet. You can make all manner of power splitting devices later. Besides, being out at nighttime is pretty risky, at least at this stage. The designers at Gate, in what I can only assume to be another manner of cutting costs, decided that the general power grid in this place needs to have a mandatory shutoff between the hours of 9 PM and 6 AM. And this means that between those hours anyways, you pretty much have to use batteries. And early on, the first batteries you get are kinda crappy. And on top of that, the facility's security bots come online at night, and they are one of the biggest hurdles you need to overcome in the early game, seeing as killing at least 3 of them is required to progress the story. So you're gonna need to conquer that fear pretty quick. But that comes later. For right now, we need to make it to the executive level of the office sector. And since the elevators are all either non-functional or completely boned, we need to do some advanced chicanery to get where we need to go. And this is what leads us to our first portal world. Portal worlds are effectively the ace up this game's sleeve. In a facility where most resources aren't renewable, portal worlds come in and provide an infinite supply of various items. They reset every few days, and all enemies and items will respawn. There's some temporal shenanigans going on I really don't know. I saw a program on a television that gave a better explanation, so we'll just watch that.
And don't be shy. Due to temporal resets, the supply of materials in these locations is practically inexhaustible.
Yeah, that sounds about right. This first one is nothing too crazy, just a small island floating in a very zen-like void. They aren't all like this, thankfully. The nature of most of them being hosted in parallel realities means that the developers can get pretty creative with them. This first one, located in Antiverse 2, is one that we'll be revisiting again in the future. But for right now, kill the Xors, harvest some Antiverse wheat, and head through the portal, which conveniently drops us off right where we need to go. The executive area on the top floor of the offices is one of the nicest areas in the game, hence why I decided to move from my humble abode in the storage room to the executive suite right outside the portal room to This makes getting loads of power cells very convenient. Unfortunately, the door to said portal room is locked with a security keypad. You may have seen a few of these previously in the facility, but we don't need a code to get in. In fact, none of these keypads need codes. Since we lack the clearance to know them, we need to find an alternative method of entry. Enter the keypad hacker. By talking to the scientist here, we can learn basically everything that I just said. But while we don't know the codes, the security bots have them stored in their CPUs, and I think you can see where this is going. We need to dismantle at least 3 security bots, harvest their CPUs, and use those to craft the components we need to make the keypad hacker. Easier said than done, of course. But with the help of the Choppinator and some electrified water, it's not too bad. With the CPUs obtained and the keypad hacker crafted, we can enter the portal chamber. And this is where I'm going to stop anyone who wants to actually, play this game. If you couldn't tell, I think this game is, it's pretty damn good. Honestly, one of my favorites of the year thus far. And if you've liked anything you've seen, pause the video, buy the game, and play it. It's worth every penny, I assure you. Still here? After hacking our way into Silo 3, we can access the portal equipment needed to get to Flathill, the portal world containing the power cells we need. Nearby, some mysterious dying militant spouts some vaguely threatening mumbo-jumbo. Just be ready to face some enemies of the human variety in manufacturing. Either way, we can start the portal and head on through. Flathill is one of the most complex portal worlds in the game, which is good because we're going to be coming back here pretty frequently. You see, this place has 3 power cell spawns, and seeing as portal worlds magically restock every week, this becomes the best way to get a renewable source of these things. You see, on top of being a story MacGuffin, they're also used in half of every late game recipe. And if you're crafting something vaguely high-tech, it's a coin toss whether or not you're going to need one of these. Regardless, Flathill itself is devoid of any hostile enemies. Well, only if you don't count the composers, which are really more environmental hazards than anything else. Mind you, they're not going to be the only ones here forever, but for this first run, they're the only ones we're going to have to worry about. On top of being the best place to farm power cells, Flathill also has several other things worth grabbing, most of them just being decorative objects though. Really though, we're here for the power cells, and the power cells only. So after doing a full run of the map, unlocking shortcuts and grabbing some reasonably worthy loot, we can grab the last power cell and head home. The portal spits us out in some locked off area of the office sector. We're confronted by 2 scientists, Dr. Janet Ross and Dr. Abe Stern. These 2 will become recurring characters across the game, popping up at least once in every sector past this one. They more or less reiterate our entire plan. Go through manufacturing and head onto the surface. And now that we have the power cells, we can actually do that. But of course, we're not actually out of the woods yet. The Order, effectively this game's HECU stand-ins mixed with a little bit of the chaos insurgency, have a pretty sizable base of operations in Manufacturing West. And seeing as they have guns and the scientists don't, it's easy to see why they have managed to get so far. There is one guy who's managed to remain mostly unaffected by the fighting, the blacksmith. Getting to him is reasonably tricky, seeing as the new enemies can be kind of a pain in the ass. It's around here though when you get access to things like heavy weapons, so it's not that big of a deal, but the first few times you go through here are probably going to be pretty rough. Either way, the blacksmith is just kind of chilling out by the forge. He pretty much just points us in the direction of the mines, which are the only tunnel that still have service access. Service, not serviced. I'm tired, man. Alright. Well, shit, looks like we're gonna be getting up pretty easy, huh? We still need the tier 2 keypad tool to get it, but that's not much of a problem. All things considered, it's pretty cheap, as long as you at least still have a power cell left over. But with our new hack tool, the entirety of Manufacturing West is pretty much at our fingertips, including the mines, which house some interesting specimens. Not important. What is important is the fact that, surprise surprise, the surface tunnel has been caved in by the Order. This friendly adjacent lab rat looking fellow tells us that we should start looking for head engineer Sarah Frake, who has a plan or, well, she's got something, alright? It's just kinda complicated. Why, of all people, this guy is the one who decided to start being so helpful is beyond me, but I digress. Frake's plan is pretty simple. She knows that an underground access tunnel to the Cascade Labs is right underneath the synchrotron, and in her mind, the best way to get around the giant particle accelerator is to overload it and effectively wipe away half of the chamber with a, controlled black hole. Sounds a little overkill, but I suppose you can't argue with the effectiveness. Since the Order have moved in, things have gotten pretty beat up and need some serious repairs, which, of course, would be our job. But the parts we need can only be obtained from the blacksmith, and the stuff he wants to trade isn't exactly, easy to come by. But he knows a place. We just have to go to another dimension to get it. Thankfully, this one is a pretty short romp, does have some decent loot, namely all of this nice furniture, which I proudly steal and use to decorate my base. Really, if you want any good furniture, you're gonna have to take it from Portal Worlds. Very few of the facility's sectors have really anything homely up for grabs, but with the necessary resources obtained, and the parts traded for, we can repair the synchrotron. Sounds like it only took 20 minutes, but in reality I spent probably close to an hour and a half cranking away at this quest, although you could blame that entirely on my pension for being over-encumbered half the time. Anyways, the black hole plan miraculously doesn't obliterate the entire base, and we're free to head on down to the Cascade Labs, which is where I personally think the game is at its best in terms of, well, pretty much everything. It's also where the game finally starts to get properly difficult too, seeing as the enemies here can be kinda tanky, especially all of the new alien variants. Because things can never be easy, our way out of this sector is blocked by a few things, one of which being this disgusting growth on the door to the security sector. The nature of this being where the majority of Gate's more unorthodox creatures were stored, I'm sure we'll be able to find something to deal with that. The main containment block is locked down though, and we need, yet again, another tier of the keypad hacker. This one requires us to do some more trading, well, in a sense anyways. It's around the Cascade Labs where we finally learn the true origin of the facility's invasion. You see, the Order, the goons we've been fighting against for the last hour, have apparently been at odds with Gate for some time. Enough so for head researcher Derek Manse to leave plenty of audio logs ominously warning of the horrors that would befall if they were to invade. And lo and behold, they did. And when they came, they took what the researchers call the Dark Lens, which is as evil as it sounds. It was a key function in Cascade's research into portal technology, and now that it's gone, the whole facility is up shit creek. Relying on something called the Dark Lens for teleportation teleportation technology seems like a pretty shitty idea to me, but I'm not the one running this rat hole, so who am I to judge? Despite the fact that the inner containment wing has been locked down, the game still introduces one of the most dangerous enemies very early on in this sector. I'm talking about the Laik, whose presence becomes a reoccurring function for, well, the rest of the game moving forward. And I know I said enemy, but really it's more of a nuisance. Or a nightmare. Mostly a nuisance, though. You see, the Laik doesn't really partake in the whole being on the same plane of reality thing that we do, so it can just manifest wherever it likes to mess you up. Early on, the only way to get it to go away is to partake in a staring contest, and in like 90% of cases this isn't a problem. But in the rare instances where it shows up in combat, yeah, it's not fun. You have to drop everything you're doing and wait for the voices to stop while you're in an active firefight. Thankfully, the developers don't hate you that much, and give you plenty of methods to deal with it, and potentially even get them to fuck off permanently, namely the use of X-ray beams, which have the same effect as looking at it. But this, again, only resets the timer on when this will happen again. A more permanent containment solution is devisable, but it's going to require a lot of setup, and for some people I can see that being impractical, especially seeing as you have to micromanage it by farming stuff. It's just kind of a pain in the ass. Anyways, the reason I bring all of this up now is when you use X-ray tech on it, it'll leave behind some of its essence, which can be used as a crafting item, but also for a specific puzzle later on in this sector. Once we get into the inner wing, we need to turn off the main security system. Sounds pretty stupid, but to sum up another 2 hours of gameplay here, we need to kill a big guy so we can use his juices to fuel a portal to another dimension. And in the Mushroom Kingdom, you'll be able to find everything you need to burn off the gunk covering the airlock to the security sector. All of this is told to us by researcher Dr. Cont, who may or may not be an extra-dimensional shapeshifter. The verdict is still out on that. Either way, we need to shut down the containment system, and the only way to get past the guns defending the control room is to take a quick detour. You have to get across this chasm, and there are a few ways of doing this. The quickest and most obvious for first-time players is to just use the gravity cube from a few doors down to jump the gap. You could also build a bridge, if you're feeling boring. But once we get to the other side, we can find our shortcut, the portal to the furniture store, which is for some reason set in a city that has an active zombie problem. Not gonna argue though, as this place is the best source of cool furniture items in the game. Really though, this place is just a stopgap between the containment block and the security checkpoint, and once we leave, we're sped out pretty much right where we need to be. Unfortunately for me, I forgot to bring all of my Laik essence with me, so now we have to run all the way back to my base just to be able to get it and come back. If you didn't already have enough, you can find the recipe for the handheld X-ray tower here, which is perfect for collecting Laik essence on the go, even if the stuff is extraordinarily radioactive. Why this machine runs on the essence of a highly dangerous entity to function is beyond me. Another thing that seems like a bit of a design flaw, but again, not my place. Anyways, now we can get what we really came here for. You see, on the 5th floor of the main containment block, there's a cell that has a bit of a giant fungus problem. It's clear that the chamber inside is a portal room, although right now the machine is evidently disabled. To get it up and running again, we need a Tarrasque ichor. What's a Tarrasque, you might be asking? This thing is a Tarrasque. And we need to kill it and harvest its juices. I told you I wasn't making that part up. This thing acts as the first boss of the game, and he's a pushover. Really, just not even remotely challenging. The arena you fight him in is so large that you can maneuver around him pretty easily. Bringing some deployable defense items will also make this a cakewalk. You can just set up a kill box to weaken him, allowing you to get a pretty easy kill. All up it took me like maybe 20 minutes. Anyways, off to the Myco fields. Well, first we need to take a quick run to the blacksmith to grab a fireproof suit. The place is hot, enough so for it to be one of the few places in the game where heat resistance is actually a necessity. Thankfully, it's really the only preparation we need to make. Everything we need to grab is pretty light, specifically this spicy antivirus gel, which we need to craft the thermite required to burn the goo, and also a bunch of other really useful crafting bits. Either way, the thermite works wonders on the goo, granting us access to the security sector. The place is more of a stopgap than anything else. It's the shortest sector in the game and doesn't even have any enemies. Well, enemies that you can kill anyways. The Reapers here are like the Laik, except they suck more and I hate them. They can't be damaged by normal means, and even if you use the X-ray lamp, they won't actually go away. Instead, they just get more aggressive. That sucks because using the lamp makes them drop night essence, which we need for the next keypad hacker tier, as well as a bunch of other more highly useful crafting materials, and also one thing we don't have yet. The whole gimmick with this sector, beyond being a test of the player's maneuvering skills, is the existence of the Night Realm. We need to hop back and forth between the two to unlock more areas of the sector, at least until we're practically forced to go back and craft the next T-pad. Not T-pad, whatever. You know what I fucking mean, the little gizmo gadget looking fucking thing. It's not important. And to get the parts we need to make it, we need to go to another portal world. Back in the Cascade Labs is a room that you'll probably miss in your first time playthrough, seeing as it serves no purpose until now. By using the Night Essence, as well as a Snagvine Seed, both found in the Night Realm, we can open the portal to Canaan. This place ought to have what we're looking for, in this case being a chunk taken out of a highly anomalous lodestone. Canaan itself is one of the larger portal worlds, seeing as it took me around 40 minutes on a first time clear. Just bring plenty of food and a spare military cot with you. The locals here aren't exactly friendly either, so bring a healing briefcase too. Why are the locals so unfriendly? I don't know, that was a genuine question. It's probably something with the corn. Must be a bad harvest year. Either way, the lodestone is deep in the bowels of Canaan, past the main village and situated in the swamp, where Dr. Lenore Riggs is holed up. She was the leader of the 4-man crew sent to survey the lands here. As you can see, 2 are dead, 1 is stuck RPing as a fisherman, and Dr. Riggs here is going to be stirring whatever is in this cauldron for the foreseeable future. She does tell us that we should be able to crack the lodestone on the anvil in town, which is something we need to do to escape, as the portal out of here requires one for power. These things are going to become increasingly useful as the game goes on, as we need them for a bunch of stuff, namely the creation of teleporter pads, which are horrible, in the sense that once you get them, using anything else to get around is horribly slow. But after opening the blast door to the Hydroplant, we can run into our new best friend, Dr. Cont. I'm not sure I like this guy. Oh, look, he's gone. Anyways, the Hydroplant. This place is a major step up in difficulty compared to the labs. I'm not even counting the security sector. That place maybe had 30 minutes of unique gameplay. It starts off by putting you under immense sniper fire, which is no fun. Our first goal here is to get to the electrical plant, which is easy enough, as long as you have enough bandages to sustain some sniper wounds. Inside the station, we can find some survivors who actually know what they're talking about. They want to get to reactors, which is a dangerous game to be playing, but their hearts are in the right place, seeing as the reactor sector is the last place in the facility with active portal equipment. As you can imagine, the whole plant is all kinds of screwed up, so we have a laundry list of chores to take care of. To summarize, probably 3 to 4 hours of gameplay, we need to open the spillway, which will hopefully spit us out in power services. As expected, this is a monumental undertaking, because it's a hexen hub. This whole section is just a fucking hexen hub. You go press a bunch of buttons and start a bunch of stuff and maybe craft a few things, but it's a hexen hub. You flip switches. But the biggest obstacle to overcome is getting to the neutrino detector on the other side of the dam. How, you might be asking? We need a diving suit for that. The sub that would normally ferry personnel from the tower is out of commission, which means we need to swim through the muck-infested waters to get inside. But there's also a bunch of other useful stuff down there, like the mercury we need to craft cold-resistant clothing. Yeah, the neutrino detector building has a portal to Switzerland. More specifically, oh god, let me go check this out. The Voussoir complex. Ugh, that was bad. Which has exactly what we'll be needing, in about 2 to 3 hours. Really coming here this early is pretty superfluous. With that being said, there's a bunch of really good loot here though, namely the components for the Cascade armor set, which is going to carry us for most of the rest of the game. It isn't all sunshine and rainbows though. Surprise, surprise, the Order are here too, having disguised themselves as members of the Cascade security team here. Somehow they're even worse, having implemented shield units into their squads, which are some of the most annoying enemies in the game. But they're not the most dangerous thing in Voussoir. That would go to the Yeti, because of course there's a Yeti. Killing him isn't required to progress, but you can craft some pretty good stuff with his drops, so I'd say it's worth it. Really, all you need to grab is the neutrino mapper from the first building so you can progress. The rest of the section is entirely optional. And now I can stop saying that fucking awful French name. French people suck. On the topic of the Hydroplant, most of this level is just kinda average. Besides the one, frankly really good portal world, the only gimmick this place has is being like 75% underwater, like the robotics lab, where we can find this sector's other important thing. In a very, very secluded section of the lab, we can find a small unflooded workshop, with what appears to be some kind of artificial intelligence. It's only upon further inspection that we can find out this machine is actually hooked up to the brain of a real person. Kylie Muir was a terminal cancer patient who, lacking any other manner of treating her illness, opted into this program, in an effort to hopefully have her consciousness transferred to a synthetic body. Of course, the researcher assigned to her stalled and meandered around for too long, and now that the whole facility has gone under, she's practically SOL without our help. We can just leave her here, if you're a heartless asshole, or you could stuff her consciousness into a motherboard and bring her along on your travels. She can be worn as a trinket and provides bonus experience gain whenever you bring her along. Later on down the line, she can have her voice function re-enabled, allowing her to give insight on events in the game. You can just keep her like this, but she does give you one request, which is pretty simple. Get her that robot body. I mean, we won't be doing that for several hours, seeing as we have to go through the entirety of the reactor sector, but it's worth keeping in mind. Speaking of reactors, after doing all of your chores and you've rebooted the spillway computer, we're allowed pretty much free passage to power services. The facility's pipe system will soon become a majorly useful tool in getting around the facility, at least until you have a full teleporter system set up. Power services are merely a buffer zone between the Hydroplant and the reactors. The reason we're even stuck here to begin with is because the elevator down to the actual reactor block is covered by yet another invasive goo species. Strange that, of all things, has become a reoccurring problem in this game, but moving on. The stuff we need to clear the other fungus is in another portal world, and because this game has finally decided now that it's time to become, difficult, this one's actually kinda hard to get through. And if you thought things were bad, it gets actually worse once we get into the reactor sector. You see, for the last, 20 hours or something, we've gotten used to dealing with the Order as the primary human enemy force. They can be dangerous, sure, but only really in larger groups. more of a nuisance by the late game. The gatekeepers, on the other hand, are a different beast. If the facility's main security were equivalent to the SCP Foundation's main security force, the gatekeepers are the Mobile Task Force, only more overtly culty. They're the guys that Cascade calls in when they need a high-stress snatch and grab, or really anything more dangerous than the regular guards can handle. And over the course of their service, they have accrued a pretty sizable stockpile of arcane technology, and that's made them practically unstoppable. And now that everything's gone ass up, they can exercise their means, and they've been practically wiping the floor with basically everything that stands in their way. Cascade staff can't even touch them. The Order is barely able to keep up, and even many of the facility's most dangerous creatures can't stand to put up a fight. And now we've pretty much walked right into enemy territory. Like the Hydroplant, this place is yet another Hexen-like hub, split up into 4 main parts: Dusk, Mist, Cloud, and Gale Reactor, and expect each one to have a heavy gatekeeper presence, meaning that they're going to become pretty much the only thing you're going to be fighting for most of the sector. And on the topic of actually fighting them, it ain't fun. Each member, from the lowliest foot soldier to the highest ranking witches, all get a hard light shield that needs to be broken before you can deal any serious damage. And yes, you can get that technology for yourself, and it is glorious when you do get it, but before then, even just 1 or 2 of these guys can be a pain to fight. And the higher ranking ones, yeah, just forget it. It's still doable, and the fact that you can get like 90% of the abilities that these guys do have is nice, but that climb up there is rough, man. Regardless, you're allowed to tackle pretty much the entire sector in any order you want, at least after you activate the Dusk Reactor. Some areas may require more advanced movement tech, but at this point you can craft both the jetpack and the long jump pack, and combining either of those with the gravity cube is a recipe for a good time. But finally, after the game is done running you through the absolute ringer in terms of throwing just about every goddamn enemy type in the game at you, you can activate all 4 main reactors and open the main silo. But we're still not out of the woods yet. Oh no, we're actually just entering the forest. You see, the gatekeepers have their main base of operations here. Well, not here, it's in Finland, which you can get to by taking this portal. Ah, yes, Finland, the hub of all occult activity in the world. Well, that was written as a joke, really, but knowing how Finnish forests can be, that's closer to reality than I thought. Our main target here is located in what appears to be this abandoned factory deep in the woodlands. Once you get inside, the main goal is pretty obvious: destroy all of the pumps powering the portal that this malignant elder god is coming through. Easier said than done, seeing how this place is crawling with keepers, but once it's taken care of, we have to go through the portal. And what's on the other side is, for a lack of a better word, bewildering. This is the Praetorium, the main strategic base of the Order. Why this portal leads here is beyond me. There's probably some lore explanation for it. I don't know. I don't read the codex. That's just, I don't fuck with that. Regardless, we're here for a specific reason, which is outlined by this mook here. You see, the Dark Lens, the thing that the Order somehow supposedly stole from the Cascade Labs that initially caused all this nonsense, somehow the gatekeepers got a hold of it and have taken it to the Residence Sector. Unfortunately for everybody, the Residence Sector went under a bit of a nasty cold snap and has become, kind of inhospitable. So, if we want it, we need to get some protection of the, shall we say, divine kind. In the keep of the Praetorium lies the Sun Disk. The Sun Disk is more or less just a MacGuffin, an excuse to get us to go through this entire dungeon and kill a bunch of stuff. And okay, it does technically have the power to make us able to withstand the extreme cold of the Residence Sector. Why the Order has this seemingly mythical and religious artifact just lying around is beyond me, but at this point the game has effectively jumped the shark. Hell, they've practically raced the shark into low Earth orbit at this point. Either way, we need to huff it through the Praetorium, grab a bunch of important crap, namely this tactical scrap, which will become important very shortly. Thankfully, with our current gear, most Order goons don't stand a chance against us, and after touching the hand of God, we can return to the facility and begin prepping for the Residence Sector. Despite the fact that we effectively have a permission slip from the Elder Gods to hang out in the Residence Sector, we still need cold-resistant gear. The gatekeepers here can seem to hold up just fine, so really I don't see what the issue here is. Like, did they also touch the Sun Disk? You know what, who fucking cares? It's not important. This place is, as you can imagine, pretty fucked. For one, it's obviously seen better days. Most everything here has been covered in ice. Most importantly, the entrance to the shopping district. For reasons we do need to get in there, but doing so will require some serious heat, in the form of a flamethrower. And of course that requires a new craftable subcomponent, that requires a bunch of stuff that you probably won't have enough of on a first-time playthrough. Say what you will about this game, but at the very least the developers made absolute fucking sure that you made nearly full use of every resource the game gives you. Like, why does the thermocell take Laic essence to craft? I mean, the Cool Ranch variant of the Laic just got introduced, so why not use his drops? To be fair, the Frozen Essence is used to craft probably the coolest set of armor in the game, so really, it's fine. Also, don't ask how I got those cool shades, it's not important. This video is just getting too long now. Once we craft the flamethrower and melt the ice wall to the shopping district, we can find that, well, you can see. it's seen some better days. Fragments is really the last challenge in the main game, both in terms of actual skill and in terms of how it likes to test my fucking patience. In a game where the movement is just fine, having a section dedicated entirely to platforming is just a bad idea, and that's not even counting the other sections that are also dedicated to platforming, but at least that other section gave you the courtesy of a double jump and not killing you instantly if you fell. Oh my god, I didn't even talk about Space Queen. You know what, we're just gonna move on. Even taking a single misstep here can have you cascading into the abyss and returning to the nearest check-in terminal. But yet again, we still can't get where we need to go, because of course the gatekeepers have set up some kind of bullshit shield generator that is blocking our path. No, we need to go through the botanical wing and dimension hop for 20 minutes, and also plug Kylie into a robot body, but that'll be important later, just so we can go to another universe where things are bad, so we can learn about the crafting recipe for a dumb exosuit, which is actually still pretty cool, but I'm sure most casual players probably aren't even going to see this. I'm sure the breaking point was probably like hour 30, but after crafting like 7 or 8 different motion modules, whatever the fuck those do, and disabling the shield generators, and partaking in the murder of more gatekeepers, because at this point the developers are throwing them at them like cannon fodder enemies, we can finally leave the facility. But before you go, stock up. Get as much ammo as you can carry, upgrade and repair all your weapons, craft a rocket launcher and some rockets, take one last good shit in your home toilet. As you can imagine, it's boss fight time, but not right away though. The Gate Fenial Observation Facility, located on what is Albatross Island in the South Georgia Sea, is a seemingly peaceful place. And well, this is it. We've made it out of Cascade. But again, we're still not out of the woods. Despite the innocuous nature of this island, the place is somehow a larger and more dense hub of antiverse portals than Flathill. In the church, we can find 2 familiar faces. Dr. Thule, who you may vaguely remember from the very start of the game, and Dr. Cont. Cont tells us that we pretty much only have one option if we want to get to the outside world. Just touch the altar. I mean, what could possibly go wrong this time? This is all being told to us by a man who blatantly admits to being a shapeshifter merely moments later. We don't have a choice though. We have to fight the Wayseeker. Despite being the most menacing looking thing in the game, it's a really easy fight. The soldiers of the Unlost, who I haven't mentioned until this point, are here to assist us. They're a squad of friendly-ish gatekeepers who've cropped up a few times before this point, namely the Sister of the Unlost, who has shown her face a few times, maybe 2 or 3 before this point, usually just to espouse some vaguely ominous bullshit and then go away. But the Wayseeker? Nah, it's just a big shoot-at until it dies fest. Just unload everything you have into him while avoiding some relatively ineffectual attacks. Kylie, in her new robot body, provides air support by firing some poorly aimed missiles at enemies attacking us. I suppose it's the thought that counts. But after dumping ammo into it for 15 minutes, it finally dies and leaves behind what appears to be a rift in the universe, which, yeah, that's probably not a new sign. Everyone but Con is rightfully not super pleased with this outcome. With that being said, Con seems to be having a good time. At least someone's happy anyways. And now we get to go back to the facility. Forever. Probably. And for now, that's all the game has to offer. The developers have gone on record and said that there will be future story-related DLC, but at the time of writing the script, this is where the story ends. And man, what a journey this has been. I know that's a feeling that any good game has, but man, something about this game just hits different. To be fair, we go from bonking little critters in an office block to killing an elder god with a rocket launcher, so I think it all lines up. Also, sorry for all the people who skipped to the spoiler section just to come here and hear that part. Honestly, I don't really know what you're expecting. But really, that's all from me. After dumping over 100 hours of my life into this game, split across 2 full different playthroughs, I can safely say that I've got my money's worth out of this game. Like New Vegas, this is probably one of those games that I'll add to the pile of ones that I'll play through at least once annually. Genuinely though, this game is great. And if you haven't been able to gather by now, despite my personal gripes with it, I can comfortably give it a rousing recommendation to basically anybody. It's fun to play, it's funny to listen to, and deep enough for more than a few playthroughs. Either way, that's all from me. Tune in next time when we take care of some unfinished business.